Hi guys, welcome back. UK here with the 9th instalment of my Pathfinder campaign. I've got to be honest, with this particular one I didn't know quite what I was going to do. I had some feedback from the players that after the amount of dungeons and ruins and stuff that we've done recently, that they wanted something a bit different. So I had pondered the idea of doing a murder mystery. Now, I've got to be honest, I can run the intrigue of Vampire the Masquerades, Vampire Requiem. I can do the mysteries and the investigations of a Call of Cthulhu game. Come to write a murder mystery and that's it, all goes up in the air. I just find that I need to plot out a murder mystery and I have a little trouble doing it. And so by the time it got to Saturday, 2 days ago, I was pulling my hair out because I couldn't get anything to work and I was just struggling. And then it's amazing where your muse pulls ideas from. I basically took yesterday afternoon off rather than go down our Sunday afternoon club. And I sat there and I had pen and paper and it was like, right, focus. And I couldn't. I just couldn't. And I thought, sorry, I can't work in a vacuum. I need to have something in the background, noise, music. And I put the telly on and the only thing I could find that was bearable to watch on a Sunday afternoon was actually the Sci-Fi Channel with a really bad monster movie called Triassic Attack. And that was it. Halfway through this film, I just scrounged up everything I got and I went, I found my plot. It's amazing where you can just drag up a plot from. And so basically I took the basics of this film plot and turned it into the night's Pathfinder game for last night. Basically our characters have travelled down from Stonebridge, across the plains for 4 or 5 days on an old trail. Sorry, that's my phone here, please ignore that. Following this trail, and they find a river and a town that's being built that according to their map and their directions shouldn't be there. So they stop and they find out that the local lord has either pleased someone or really annoyed them back in the city of Eldraine, and they've been given this plot of land as their own, and they've roped up people willing to come out here and build a frontier town. And most of the town is done, but they're still constructing in one particular area, and they've got a crane type thing that they've got from, I assumed, when you see things like Moria and so forth in the Lord of the Rings movie, they've got these cranes and pulleys, and I thought, well, it's D&D, it's Pathfinder, it's a slightly more fancy version of that. I can imagine them having built some kind of dwarven scaffold and things, so that was in there. And they get there, and word has already reached them from a few other travellers that these guys are the Vanquishers. As soon as they say their name, that's it. They've got a crowd of people talking to them, wanting to know their stories and so on. Which are all, as in the case of all adventurers, are bigged up something chronic. They didn't defeat a wyvern back in the forest, it was a dragon. Then it was 2 dragons and so forth. But as they go around, they find out there's been a couple of unfortunate deaths. In that 2 of the workers went off to a nearby wood to gather some smaller bits of wood. They've just got, they've got tree trunks and they've got planks, but they needed something smaller. And they never came back. And the following morning, when they went looking for them, one of them was found savaged to death, and the other one was missing the lower half of his body, presumably bitten off. The party cleric, Haji, asks the local physician if he can have a look at the bodies, and sure enough, he finds a piece of bone, a tooth, a bit of dead enamel in the right wound which had been overlooked. They speak to the Watch, who are more than happy for them to help out in any way they can. They are the Vanquishers after all. But they are told it has to be sorted out basically tomorrow afternoon at the latest, because tomorrow is the Lord's wife's birthday party, and there are nobles and guests from southern Varizia coming up, already here, and they can't have these deaths go on during that. And then they find out that a possible reason for this is a disgruntled gnome druid who lives in the forest named Bodyknock McNackle. Great name, I thought. Who, when they describe him, he's not a brilliantly coloured. Gnomes on Galarian are brightly coloured, and they love life, and they all do. This guy's like a goth. He's black hair, he's grey skin, black clothes, bones and stuff hanging off them. It's all a bit weird. Unfortunately, none of the characters know anything about gnomes to know about the fading, which is what happens when a gnome runs out of things to experience. They begin to go all shady and then eventually fade away. And essentially, that's what's happening to this particular gnome. He's, he won't leave his forest. He's experienced everything he can in his forest, and it's killing him. But they find out that they basically made a deal with this druid, or agents of the Lord had, that they could build this town here, providing they didn't expand too far out and they didn't damage or chop down too much of the forest. But they believe that the gnome has gone back on this particular thing and he's summoned something. So the party head off into the woods and they find the remains of the camps, the attack site, and they find these big dinosaur prints. And then Haji passes a particular role and he works out that this thing isn't a living thing, this is a skeleton footprint, and this guy has summoned some kind of undead dinosaur. As you can see, I've ripped the plot off from the film. One of the other characters, Darken, the dwarf, stayed in town and he finds the other half of the dead workman carpenter as it floats down the river and gets stuck under the town bridge, which he brings to the Watch's attention. They take it away and they basically ask the company not to divulge that this has been found, let them sort it out themselves, sort of thing. They come back to town and they talk to the Watch, and it's basically a case of, look, this is what we think he's done. We've found this site where he's found these where these bones have been found, and he's obviously done some ritual and he's animated this as a skeletal T-Rex or something. It's like, oh. So they agree that what they'll do is, as night falls, they'll have a couple of watchmen go around, they'll plant these burning torches around the village, around the town, so they can keep watch. And during the night, as they're doing this, one of the characters actually hears the scream from one of these guards, wakes everyone else up, and they rush out, poorly armoured, and find this T-Rex skeleton striding away, dead guard and smashed line of these blazing torches. And so they start to fighting this thing. And they're having real trouble, it's a big tough beastie. And the spells aren't working to their effect, and even with the weapons they've got, they're having trouble. I mean, they're taking bits of bone off of it, but it's a real tough fight. And the thing has this weird ability, it can expand its rib cage, which snaps shut around somebody, sealing them in a cage, which then constricts and tries to crush them, and then regrows its rib cage. And they work out from this, they're not dealing with some kind of undead, they're dealing with a construct. This is a bone golem, which normally would be well above their level. But I looked over and I went, actually, they could probably handle this if they're careful. But more to the point, if they can come up with a really good way of dealing with it, Pucker will run with their ideas, which is what happened in the end. Anyway, the party's fighter, Gabriel, manages, because the thing's so just a mindless machine, he's just going for the characters in front of it, climbs up the back of this T-Rex and ties himself on with some rope and just sits there smacking the skull with his mace. And at a certain point in the fight, when I feel the party's getting a bit hammered because they were unprepared, they weren't properly armoured, there's a whistle heard off in the direction of the woods and the thing turns and strides off, still with this guy, with Gabriel on the back of it. And they're chasing after it, they can't keep up with it, and not able to get attacks on it as well. And then all of a sudden there's a weird noise and boof. Gabriel gets hit by a baleful polymorph spell, which unfortunately he fails both the fortune save and the will save, and he's turned into a mouse. The armour falls off with the mouse intact. They rummage through his stuff as the dinosaur strides off, and they find this mouse, and they work out what's happened. And so they basically lock the mouse away in his armour or in a backpack. And thankfully, Besnik, their employer, who is Verizian, which is, they're kind of gypsies sort of thing. I basically said that he'd got a potion that his grandmother had left him just on the case of something bad happened to him or his daughter Simza. And he manages to reverse this by almost drowning the mouse in this potion bowl and restores Gabriel. So the following morning they put their heads together and they come up with a plan. The party druid, who at this point, I don't know, I mentioned this in the prior scenario report, is a druid who hasn't got knowledge nature, has no clue. So he doesn't spot any of the markings of druidic script and stuff on the edge of the forest, basically saying keep out and blah. And he sets up and he starts trying to talk to the druid. And Bonnie Knock speaks to him through the bushes. There's like all the leaves mould into a face and start talking to him. And he basically comes across as a complete nutter, basically, which is what he is, saying that they've trespassed too far into his forest, and they've lied to him and all this. And even though he's putting the party druid Grill puts on a very good argument both sides, the gnome's not having any of it. He's gone doolally and he realises this, so he says fine, I'll try and talk to them, and he makes his excuses and leaves. But the rest of the party have come up with this idea. Part of the town, the closest to the forest, about half a mile away from it, is still under construction. It's a series of walls, no roofs, no upper floors. One of them has the pit for a cellar, and they rope the workers together, the carpenters and masons. And what they're going to do is they're going to get some of the tree trunks, they're going to block off the end of the street, and they're going to get these other guys hiding in buildings on the edge with ropes tied across, and they're going to lure the dinosaur back. And once it's in there, these guys can pull these ropes, tie them to something, inside the shell of the building, and peg it. So the dinosaur is trapped in the streets. But they're going to get some of them to stay in the construction yard just off one side, and one of them in the crane. And there were some hints dropped, but they pretty much picked this up themselves. And so Gabriel drops everything he's got. He leaves his armour off. He's just got his sword and an axe and his clothes, and he just runs into the forest and he stands there hacking away at these trees. Unfortunately, he fails a perception check, so he's startled when suddenly this gnome, Bonnie Knock, staggers out of the forest and collapses in front of him, badly wounded, and says that he's got to stop it. The dinosaur has breached his control. Typical monster movie fare, don't summon up things bigger than your head and all that sort of thing. And they need to stop it. It's going to kill everybody. And he passes out. Well, Gabriel, basically, his opinion is this guy's a complete nutter. He's, if we do bring him back and heal him, he's just going to turn into what he did before, and he decides to dispatch the gnome there and then. Fair enough. I wasn't going to argue on that, considering how he's been portrayed. So, and he basically starts yelling out, "Oi, dinosaur!" Making a lot of noise. And sure enough, this thing comes, and he pegs it back to town. And I said, you're going to need to give me 3 constitution checks. You've got a 16 con, you're a long distance runner sort of level of endurance, you can do it. And he passes all 3 rolls I required him to make. I think the lowest he rolled was like an 18 or something, more than he needed. And he managed to keep ahead of this dinosaur and lure it into the construction site, into the streets. Ropes go up and they start fighting. In the last scenario, I had allowed the party cleric Kendo, sorcerer, not cleric, Kendo, to purchase. He wanted a magic wand of something or other to help him in combat. So he got a wand of burning hands. He paid extra, so he got a much higher level version than he needed, and that really saved their bacon. The fire was burning this beastly, but they got the construction crew, to start operating the crane, and every so often, when they could, they just loaded it up with the construction rubble and swung it round, and so when people were suddenly out of the way, they'd drop it on the dinosaur. And they did this 2 or 3 times before it got really badly injured, and then Darken, who had failed to hit, this is a dwarf fighter, who had failed to hit anything all game pretty much, just walks up with a hammer, critical hit, confirmed crit, smack, the head comes flying off the dinosaur, smashes through one of the buildings, and the whole lot crumbles to bone. And he's victorious, and instantly as a cry of "Darken the Dinosaur Destroyer" goes up from the locals, and the beast is no more. It has been dispatched. And then they have invites to the party after that, and they can go and mingle. And unfortunately, they are the talk of the town. The poor lord's wife, who's a bit of a nasty so-and-so anyway by all accounts, is not happy. Because this was her birthday party, and all they want to talk to are these smelly oiks who are just adventurers, and this was her special day. Besnick had brought her a gift, a big bolt of golden cloth that she could have her seamstress make a dress out of or something. So he's popular, but the vanquishers of the party aren't. So that gives me a bit more leverage on what to do with them at some point. She's going to have to get her petty revenge, I think. And that was basically it. I had stolen the plot from a sci-fi original movie. I'm going to have to start watching more of them, I think. And it just worked really well. That final sort of sequence, running from the dinosaur and skeleton, and the fight in the street in the confines of the construction site was awesome. Very cinematic, brilliant game, and certainly my favourite since probably we started. Really good game, everybody enjoyed it, and now I've just got to work out a means to top that for the next time. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope it's been enjoyable, and talk to you soon.